kill you.
And welcome back to Zaku Talk. This season, of course, G versus Wing, and that means my co-host this week is Bag of Glass. You know what? It's not so bad. It's like if Donald Duck were made out of glass.
Trying to sound like glass is hard to do, so you have to kind of just make the scratchy sounds. Hey, it's Bob Skerry, voiceover artist.
And of course we have Lev Van Rensselaer on the audio boards. And this week we're going to talk about episode 19 of both G Gundam and Gundam Wing. But first, Bob, how's your week been going?
Week's been going okay. I did a minor recording yesterday for a Super Sentai fan project, and I am on the way to do some recording after this session is done. What about you?
Yeah, busy week for me, more meetings. I actually, after this recording is done, have to go and do several auditions for this pilot that I'm shooting in January. And then I'm also assisting on a few other pilots happening around that time as well in other capacities. And then, of course, working on my own project. Some interesting news this week, Bob. I won a grant to be sort of a temporary member for the year of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, which to most of your viewers means nothing. Their biggest claim to fame is that they are all the members who vote on the Golden Globes. But what this allows me to do, besides having a vote in a mostly meaningless award, is being allowed access to a lot of film festivals nearly every weekend for free. So I'll get to see a lot of the new up-and-coming materials that will be released in the coming years as they make their way through the festival circuits.
Well, yeah. So for the viewers at home, this means nothing because you can't view our podcast. But for the listeners, this is actually pretty exciting, skeyhill. I'm 100% excited for you, and I can't wait for you to dish with me down the line about other films that are coming down the way or other hopefuls that maybe you'll connect with.
Are you bringing up being unable to view because you had an excited reaction? Is that why?
No, I brought up view because you called them viewers, and this is a purely audio
they're viewers,
series.
Metaphoric viewers. They metaphorically view with their ears. All right, so we have here episode 19 of G Gundam. Bob, why don't you give us a little summary?
Certainly. Fierce battle, Dragon Gundam versus Bolt Gundam, or in Japanese, Gekito, Dragon Gundam Tai Bolt Gundam. Literally, the only word there is Gekito, which Geki is generally equated to fierce or some sort of strong energy. So fierce battle is a pretty close translation. And Tai, I want to say is in the same vein as the particles, but I can't say that for certain.
Okay.
If it were To, it would be the particle and. So if it had been Dragon Gundam To Bolt Gundam, it would be the one and the other. But I digress. Domon and Rain are still training they didn't put in here, the Guyana Highlands. Rain is fixing the Shining Gundam while Domon continues his training. Schwarzbruder is watching Domon's progress. Saisaishi, who refuses to train, suddenly jumps down from a cliff and pulls up Rain's dress, exposing her panties, then runs away as she pulls and holds her dress back down. There's a lot of description for something that doesn't even
I know, it was like 2 seconds.
I know. Domon sees this, much to Rain's embarrassment, and loses his balance, with Schwartz musing he has not trained enough. Meanwhile, Saisaishi has ended up in the middle of the forest, hungry. He steals some food from the Neo-Russia camp and sees Natasha bathing in a pond. Again, this is really unnecessary. He watches, but is caught when he drops his spoon. He then ends up on the edge of a cliff, turns back, and bumps into Argo. Sai is suddenly hit with memories of the Devil Gundam and has a panic attack. He falls off the cliff and returns to the Neo-Japan camp. Rain is chastising Sai while bandaging him. The Dragon Gundam then appears to attack the Neo-Russia camp, forcing Argo to fight Saisaishi. After a tough fight, it is revealed that the assailant was in fact an imposter, the Death Dragon, a Death Army copy of the Dragon Gundam. Sai and Argo, unable to fight back, are assisted by Domon and Schwartz. However, the maintenance to the Shining Gundam was incomplete, and Domon struggles to control it. However, with Schwartz's advice, he is able to focus and defeat the Death Dragon.
Okay, there we go. We definitely got to pick up on the fan service elements of that episode. Pretty good.
Yes.
Over here in episode 19 of New Mobile Report Gundam Wing, we have Assault on Barge, Baruji, Kyoshu. I'm presuming Baruji is just barge.
Yes. Once again, Baruji is just them doing a loan word moment.
Yeah, interestingly enough, it sometimes gets translated into English as bulge.
Well, yes. Okay, so this is where I actually, back when Skeyhill and I were but wee lads, I purchased a complete idiot's guide to conversational Japanese. And they talk about how, unfortunately, some of these loan words don't translate well because they have, in effect, a homophone when done as such.
Yes.
So love sounds like rub. Rice may or may not sound like lice or lease, depending on how somebody tries to pronounce it. So unfortunately, that is a possible situation, but it can end up in some funny ways. They actually make a head nod to something like that in an anime called Samurai Flamenco, where trying to explain why the hero got his powers, this form of deity just says, well, it's just a homophone. You happen to use the words that sound like a call for this power. It's like Eromanga and the place in Australia sounding like erotic manga. It's the same thing. No, it's not. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
That's exactly the kind of conversation that was had between a character and God.
All right. Well, that sounds like an interesting read or watch there. So maybe find that on your travels, dear listeners. So I like Barge more. The manga has switched it to Bulge, but I grew up with Barge. I'm sticking with it. I'm on Team Barge. But let's see what happens in this episode. Duo is easily defeated and captured by Oz after trying to fight off mobile dolls, which are computer-controlled mobile suits that require no pilot. Hero sees that battle on television and decides to locate and kill Duo, but ends up rescuing him instead. While Lady Un advocates peace, Wu Fei attacks Space Fortress Barge, but like Duo, his Gundam is easily defeated by the mobile dolls, but manages to escape before unsubordinate Nicole finishes him off. All right, so these are our episodes, Bob. So, in G Gundam, more training stuff going on, but with a less focus on Domon until he has to sort of find this revelation. I like spending time with Russian guy. I like Russian lady. I like sort of the whole Russian contingent. I'm on board.
Yeah, I figured you would be because you are definitely some sort of a, what would that be, a Slavophile?
I guess that's sort of branding, kind of a bigger net, though. Maybe it's like a Russophile.
Russophile sounds about right.
Maybe we could go with that.
We like words here on Zaku Talk, but I digress. I feel like they did a good job of letting us have more time with Natasha, I guess is what they had here, and I just called her Natasha because Natasha No Goodnick from Bullwinkle.
Moose and Squirrel.
Rocking Bullwinkle. Yeah. Moose and Squirrel.
Moose and Squirrel. And Danny DeVito is running around, and
So, that all said, I was glad to see this because it gave me a moment to be like, oh, wow, they're calling out the fact that they're just talking down to her for what one could read in the text as sexist and subordinate holdings, and that she is trying to do the best actions, not just what her higher-ups tell her to do. And then she tries to twist that and apply it to Argo in order to be able to get her machinations into play. So she's a gray character, and I appreciate that instead of just the hackneyed, oh, she's Russian and she's got a crop, so she's got to be a villain.
Yeah, there was an interesting view on interesting glimpse at Japan's view on Russia, where the Russian government's just like, hey, you know, all that stuff that happened in Japan, probably a mass hallucination. At least that's what we're telling everybody. So you got to stick with that story. And he's just like, oh yeah, okay. So Russia's still corrupt even in the future century. Good to know. Yeah,
well, I mean, that was also like post Cold War and still uneasy relations after everything settled on that with the tearing of the Berlin Wall.
Yes.
So I think I may have mentioned this back when we had done one of the other Argo episodes, but back in Captain Planet and the Planeteers, a now 30-year-old series. Yeah. I just have to acknowledge that to be sad for
very
a moment.
old.
Very old indeed. The woman who had the wind ring, she was initially supposed to call herself a member of the USSR, and they had to redo the ADR on that. They had to redub her, saying that she came from Russia, or the Soviet Union, something to that effect.
Yeah,
So it was just interesting that when something is in production, sometimes you have to make these quick edits if it's surrounded by a political thing or the naming of a country. I mean, it's Istanbul, not Constantinople, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that, you know, was sort of like 400 years ago.
I know,
so we had some time to get used to that, where we sort of grew up. But my thought as I was watching this, and I'm thinking like, oh, you know, it's probably good that it went back to Russia by the time the show got started, because then you just say Neo-Russia instead of Neo-USSR. Like, that would be a whole thing that I'm glad.
No, sir?
Yeah. That I didn't have to hear. You know, but like, so I mentioned a few episodes ago when they were all transformed that the Russian guy had like a weird voice now compared to what the other people did to let you know that they were quote unquote hypnotized. But like, his voice is just this now. So I'm wondering if like he just didn't speak very much in those other episodes, so I didn't notice it. Or if the voice actor in English had changed, because I don't like his voice now, but I was okay with it in the earlier episodes.
You know, while we talk today, I'll make sure to take a quick look at the IMDb or something. But I recall that you'd mentioned that something like that, a full casting change had happened in English for Sally Poe.
Sally Poe,
right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was actually just listening to our episode, I forget if it was 7, 8, or 9, the other just yesterday, and how we approached some of those topics. But I do wonder how many times it's a change of person and not just a change of intonation. If you don't have a character on screen for a while, it's a lot easier, especially on a weekly series, to just shift the way that they talk or shift a person in because you didn't have enough time with them anyway.
Yeah.
The first 2 times that we see Argo, he does not talk more than maybe a few minor sentences.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if that. He didn't even talk a whole hell of a lot in this episode.
I don't know. It felt like a lot. It felt like compared to other episodes, other appearances, he wouldn't shut up. But like but I think it was partly because his voice just feels so wrong for him in English. It feels like this guy should be doing that English guy who was like the old champion. It would be better suited for that. Yeah, it would be better suited for him than this big brooding. Right? Like it's. I don't know. Like it sort of takes me out of the character and doesn't feel right for him. But I don't know if it's that. Like, if it's like Zex, where the intonation changed as he got more comfortable in the role, or if it's like Sally Poe, where it seems like a completely. If it's the same actress, she's doing an impressive job, drastically changing her voice.
Yes. I'm actually on the IMDb for this right now because I now need to know who Argo Galsky was in English, because as I look, it seems like there's only like one per Japanese voice actor, which is what I'm listening to it in. Yeah, I'm surprisingly having a hard time finding Argo Galsky as an English voice actor here. So it could very well be that they just threw various voices as the main dubbing for the person who had to do Argo. Oh, no, here it is. Stephen Holgate is the only one I'm seeing. And it doesn't say the number of episodes or which episodes.
Okay.
So that would be the individual that you'd be looking up if you wanted to see what they do. He only has 7 acting credits.
Mm-hmm.
He was Char Yar in Zeta Gundam, or Chan Yar, excuse me.
Oh.
He was in North of 60, a TV series, in a single episode as a duty counsel.
Yeah.
He played Argo Gulski, and he picked up Argo Gulski again for Battle Assault 2.
Okay.
He was also in Portraits of a Killer, Gone in a Heartbeat, and Jubei-chan, the Ninja Girl, as Odago Koinosuke.
Yeah, I also know the Gundams. It sounds like he had a small role in Zeta.
Yeah, I have no idea who Chan Yar is.
Yeah,
but
not a very important person. But Gundam Battle Assault 2, very good game.
yes,
like it a lot.
very, very much so. And we should play that again at some point.
It's tough. That's an annoying one that it was only on the PlayStation 3, and they haven't made it downloadable in the PlayStation
Battle Assault
Store
2, it had a disc. I thought you had the disc.
Oh, what am I thinking of? Gundam Dynasty Warriors 2. Gundam Battle
Yes.
Assault 2, I love. It is my favorite Gundam game, and I can't explain why yet, though. We have to wait till we get later on in the series.
Oh, of course, but I just want to let people know that there was a point back in 2014 where Scale and I had attempted to do a Let's Play series called Two Tired Gamers, and that was one of the games that we were going to have on the initial run.
Yeah, well, that's interesting enough. That game, when we got that, the day we couldn't film Real Love because of the snowstorm, and yet despite the snowstorm, you, me, and Richard decided to go travel to Game Underground, that used game store.
Yeah.
That was where I found Gundam Battle Assault 2, and I was like, oh, shit, this game. It's got all the Gundams I like. It's got all the Endless Vault Gundams. Great. But then it had a bunch of the other Gundams, and then something about playing that game wanted me to play the Gundam Battle Dynasty Warriors 2, which was for display at the GameStop Alberto worked at when I graduated high school. And I'm like, oh, that game's got to be cheap now. And now I have a PlayStation 3. So let's do that. And then I did that. And then I did Gundam Battle Assault, Gundam Dynasty Warriors 3. And then I'm just like, well, fuck it. I should just watch these shows then. And then that's how this all began, all in 2014. It just sort of exploded from there.
Well, would you look at that, kids? Mm-hmm. There's a whole history behind this series that I didn't even know.
Yeah. And then like for, 5 months straight, I watched every Gundam show either again or for the first time, all in a row, back to back, because there was so much it just took forever to get through. It was like almost 700 episodes of something. It was basically One Piece, but at least got broken down into many different shows, so it didn't feel monotonous.
Yeah, absolutely. At least you had a change of characters, even if sometimes those characters are the same, just with a different name.
Yeah, I don't know. Gundam's usually done a pretty good job at that. As boring sometimes as their main characters are, they kind of, I don't know, definitely.
I was referring to the chars of each series.
Oh, yeah, but that's the best. That's the best part. That's why he's so much better than Darth Vader. And he's never the main character in any of them anyway. So like, it's always interesting what role he plays in the series and why he's changing what he wants from the series, and if he's on the side of the good guys and if he's not, and why is he not, and is he just a rival or is he an enemy? It's very exciting and fun.
As opposed to apparently this episode of G Gundam, which we are now about 20 minutes into talking,
this G Gundam has
scratched.
Its own char clone here in the ninja guy who has like a weird Santa hat dangly thing I noticed for the first time here. Feels like an odd ninja accessory. Is that a reference to something?
That I'm unsure of. I feel like it is supposed to be an amalgamation of a sort of trickster type. I'm thinking Yoshimitsu, meeting something to the effect of a jester situation, but he doesn't play it up.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's something that while I would love to look it up, I'm going to let the listeners look up for now.
Yes, please take a look at that and then give us your findings at zakutalkcast@gmail.com. We're happy to take a look, and if we like what you bring, we might even read them on air.
Yes, please and thank you.
Yeah, so Domon upset that he's not able to work with the sword well yet, though I think perhaps a little subtextually the sword is meant to sort of tie into super mode, and whatever he needs to control this sword or do what he needs to do with the sword, we'll let him do what he needs to do for super mode, I guess. I'm not sure how he got there, but, we're in this genre, and, like, I don't know, like, sword fighting seems to be, like, the purview of the main character, so, I'm fine.
It has nothing to do with sword fighting. The idea here is that up to the point where we got to Shinjuku, we relied on Domon being more of a wild fighter than any of us realized till that moment. He was relying purely on a handful of techniques and using his anger as a fuel. That's the whole impetus of why he's even on the ground, is that his frustration with the situation is supposed to act as the fuel for the emotion system that they use for the Shining Gundam. What we're seeing is that Schwarzbruder is trying to teach him that no, it is not about using raw emotion to run forward. It's instead about using the serenity of battle, the ability to focus one's energy, as we see in this episode, and all of your senses towards your target, to remove all external feeling and all external sensation and focus solely on the attack. Doing so will lead, as we saw in this episode and some of the other pieces that we've been getting in the past episode or two, into him being able to channel his focus towards the goal that he has set forth. It's common in Bushido and other metatextual points within fighting that you should not be just wailing about and wasting your energy and so on and so on. It is about focus. It is about tempering one's soul.
So you would say this sword is like a wax on, wax off kind of moment for Domon?
Yeah, to dumb it down for the average Westerner, certainly.
Yes.
And I don't mean that in a negative way, but like it is very much a simplification. The idea is that it is a stand-in for the realization that it is not about the sword, it is about the self who is behind the sword.
Yeah.
Your body is your sword, but in order to utilize that properly, you need to be able to look inward and use that as the guiding force.
Yeah, which he seems to make some progress with, as we see by the end of the episode. Everybody sort of loves the Gehenna Islands. Everybody, I guess, they're all like, hey, let's go train here. Where is the...
They all got they all got word some way or another that Domon was making his way out there. So they keep trying to find him because at this moment, those individuals all see him as the prime contender to take down. They have information on him compared to literally any other fighter, and rather than waste resources, they would rather focus on him and take a bigger head out of the game.
And Domon, Rain is still kind of working on his machine. So when Domon gets in it, it has like a negative feedback to him. And I thought like, I bet Domon wish it took a more realistic time to get in his mobile suit so he could have been warned better about this.
I mean, yeah, that's one way to listen about that. But the other way is, how fucking cool is it that we're in a series that lets us not worry about the technical mechanics of the thing unless it becomes important for teaching the lesson of the day? Without that negative feedback, he wouldn't have been able to teach himself to stop taking that haptic feedback that's going on around his body and focus solely on the Death Dragon.
No, listen, I got no problem with it. It was just sort of amusing that he like snaps his fingers, he's in it, he's shocked, and then Rain's like, no, Domon, wait. And I'm just like, oh, if this played out in real time, Domon would have been like, what, Rain? What are you talking about? And then there could have been a debate, but he just snaps, he cuts into the machine, he's like, this sucks. But I think it's a good thing for Domon to go through, especially since he hasn't really done anything all episode. So he's just been sitting back watching. He's watching this much more interesting fight between China Boy and Russia Guy. That ends, unfortunately, a little too early, but there's a lot happening in the episode anyway, so you have to get time for Domon to do his main character stuff. But I would have liked...
the fights are quicker than you might think.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a little more of this fight. Yeah, then, I don't know, you could have taken time elsewhere out of the episode and it would be fine, I think. But what are you going to do,
Well, you have to give the fan service, and you have to get these subplots for each of the characters.
Yeah,
I do want to say that the two Shaolin elders are kind of just the worst.
Yeah, I was okay.
We hadn't thought about the possibility of Saisaishi losing. Oh, no.
Yeah, for most of the episode, despite sort of them doing the annoying master plan thing, which seemed like it never was going according to plan, though they felt very confident in it. They actually, this time, compared to other episodes, weren't talking side by side for like the first time for a large chunk. And I go like, all right, you guys are less annoying when you do this. But immediately when they do something annoying, they have to do it in unison. And it's that moment you just brought up. So you're like, all right, well, status quo, here we're back.
Yeah. They're the best gay lovers.
Yeah, it felt like a lot of this episode was actually meant to be sort of like the comedic relief episode.
Well, compared to the next episode, yes, I would say that.
I mean, yeah, like you're spending a lot of time sort of with this panty thing, and then Domon being embarrassed, and then them having a fight about that, and then the China guy looking at sort of the naked lady in the water, and like the whatever comedy was supposed to come from that. I like that I don't know. I like that it feels more like we can deviate. What I like about Gundam Wing is that we don't have to hang out with Hero Yui all the time. And what I like about the kind of phase we're in G Gundam now is we don't have to spend all this time with Domon anymore. We can sort of go and be like, hey, what are these two guys doing? What are these two countries up to? Oh, yeah, Domon's in the background. Hey, America's got this whole thing he's doing here in Brooklyn he's having trouble with. I like how much time we didn't spend with Domon here. It was kind of refreshing. It was a little breather for me. I think it helps that I like Russia guy more. So great. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what we're gonna do with French guy next episode, I presume. But there you go. Because I don't know, like it feels
there's
weird.
A lot more introspection during the next episode with George Dassin.
Yeah, like what is my takeaway from what Domo's done at the end of this episode? Is this training done, or is he still training? What reason will French guy have for going to this area if he's not done?
He is still training, and that's what seems to be the greater machination on behalf of Schwartz is that he's trying to unify these individuals into being the Shuffle Alliance, is what you'll see. Because, I mean, you've got 4/5 of them there anyway. They're all seeing that they can feed into each other. So they're learning to cooperate instead of running off in their different directions.
Yeah, and I am appreciating now that we're entering this phase where the quote unquote space opera-ness of it is coming into play, where these Russia and China are having this little tiff. They solve it quickly, but at the moment that it's there, and then Russia guy doesn't want to fight the other guy, and the China guy doesn't know how to take that, if it's an insult or what. We solve that too, but the beginnings of like other people having conflicts with each other that don't involve our main character is always sort of interesting ground for me to tread in these sort of the Gundam metaverse, and so I'm glad we're getting here now with it. Yeah.
Were there any other points in this episode that stood out to you, better, worse, or otherwise?
No, I mean, everything, right, for a training sequence, it's all sort of there and what I expected. I didn't know when you told me last week that we were going to have both China and Russia in this episode, I didn't know kind of what to expect. I didn't know if it would feel too busy. And it's sort of busy in the second half and maybe not busy enough in the first half, or what they're busy with in the first half I didn't need. So you could have redistributed it. But overall, it's fine. Works fine for me.
I think it would have been weirder if we tried to make a not true but pseudo two-parter out of having Saisaishi show up and then Argo, or the reverse, to have a Domon moment before having an arbitrary fight. At least it is compact, but I feel like it hits all the emotional notes that they want you to have for this moment. It is certainly not a Gundam Wing situation, much like what we will probably jump into now.
Well, I guess, just lastly, like you've mentioned sort of numbering these people, and you've numbered these two as 4 and 5. And so, like, if that's their designation in this 5-man team, you obviously don't want to spend that much time with him. You already have an issue where it's like, all right, how do we find an excuse for each one of these people to go back one at a time and create a situation where they have to sort of grow past what happened to them, their PTSD from the Devil Gundam fight. And so, yeah, there is a compactness to it that saves probably what could have been a very repetitive kind of set of 4 episodes. What was his name? Saisaishi, you said?
Saisaishi is Neo-China's rep.
So him and Russia guy both kind of work through a little bit. The Russia guy a little less on the nose, but it is there to kind of get through it. And so, and Domon even does too. So, fine. No problems, really. It's fine.
All right. Yeah, no, it's not meant to be like, oh wow, big episode. It's a great breather in this. I'm gonna call it a bumpy path here, because we at the end of the Shinjuku arc, we got the Master Asia learning that he knows a lot more than what he taught Domon.
Yeah.
But it's done in a sort of goofy way. So we're getting that, and then we go into a pseudo-serious first part of the next with Domon doing his training stuff. There are some minor light moments, but this is supposed to help cleanse our palate. I think we're going to get, even though we have a silly moment or two with the butler having his own not Gundam.
What?
I can't wait for you to see it.
Is this next week's episode?
In next week's episode.
Who has a butler?
George.
Oh. Why?
Or rather, he has as his mechanic assistant that butlery guy that we saw only a moment of back when we were in Neo France.
I thought his like menagerie was like that blonde lady. What happened to her?
She is a interest of his, but she has nothing to do with the piloting or the mechanics or anything. She's just, oh wow, I'm your biggest #1 fan and I want you to love me. That's it. She has nothing to do with his piloting.
All right, that's less interesting. He's got a butler though, so he's got like an Alfred. He's got a Norman.
Yeah,
from Big
he's
O.
got an Alfred, and that Alfred is the one that helps with maintaining his mech and trying to be his oh geez, what's the word for it? His confidant.
Okay.
But he's gonna have a weird like car steering wheel driven butler mecha. So just get ready to have fun with it.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all. All right. Well, Relina has a butler, and we're okay with him, so fine.
We have Relina's butler, who might as well have been in the 1996 cult classic Hackers, okay?
Yeah, it's an odd. Butlers just have superpowers. If television has taught me anything, Bob, get a butler, they all have superpowers.
You're not wrong, because to manage that level of a house, you're already going over the top. Might as well pull it up to the 10s.
Yeah. All right. We can go to Gundam Wing now if you want. This assault on barge. How is it feeling for you?
Oh, I do have one last thing, because I don't want to necessarily use it as my way we go.
Okay.
The moment that Argo is doing his intimidation and Saisaishi starts having his panic attack.
Yeah.
I decided that I think I want to use that for one of the next characters I play in a game. Whether or not it's with one of our Basim games or not, I don't know yet. But, his terrifyingly spiky eyebrows and his just stern demeanor and his charisma by way of intimidation over politic or otherwise is just lovely, and I would love to play a character like him in the near future. So.
Okay, well, that could be interesting to see. All right.
Yeah, well, you know the archetype I tend to fall into.
Yeah. So. I like it when people step out of bounds. It's fun for me too. So so your boy here, Duo, kind of comes in pretty early, gets his ass kicked. I told you he's one of the weaker pilots, so it makes sense. But Wu Fei, one of the better pilots, also gets his ass kicked because these mobile dolls are a beast. So. Compared to when Trey's is just like, fuck it, boom, boom, boom. Get out of here, fake soldiers. So, but this is sort of what I hinted at maybe 10 episodes ago, where if you look at the Oz people now, they have the little tin man on their shoulder, which sort of complements the lion we used to see fitting in with this Wizard of Oz motif, but feels better for here because they're people who are commanding these tin soldier mobile suits. So, a little fun there. So what'd you take away from what was going on here?
So you had already given me the heads up about how Duo is a thief, and that was his whole background. So going into it, I was prepared for him to fail miserably, especially since they'd already said that they didn't really see any energy signatures in the little shuttle he was using.
Yeah.
I could have taken that as, that's him baiting. But I think he also went in with the acknowledgement that his energy reserves in Death Scythe were also pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we didn't see him trying to zip around too much in space. But
There's also, you wouldn't know this because the show never mentions it because they love to hide all the realistic stuff. But like these Gundams were calibrated for landfall. And so like it's very hard for a mobile suit to work on land. You have to sort of balance it and calibrate it differently because it has to work under gravity. So now it's not calibrated for space. So it would also make sense they'd have a harder time or would use up more energy just to be normal when they're fighting in space.
Certainly. But that kind of comes and goes for me, the whole duo thing. What interested me was seeing Un, and I'm of two minds, much like her. It was interesting to see her in her pacifist, very diplomatic self versus her standard villainous wench self. And I noticed that the thing that caused the snap between personalities the first time around was the mention of Treize. And now I'm starting to wonder, traditionally when I've watched anime or TV shows that have this kind of character, because her type is not uncommon, where you have this horrifying militant femme fatale that is also the flower that is trying to aim for peace. Typically speaking, it's the flower is being mind controlled to become the femme fatale. But I'm starting to wonder, especially with the way that we've been discussing this over the course of the past 19 weeks, whether or not she is the femme fatale who has been brainwashed to be the flower by Treize. Again, listening to the episode the other day, a few episodes back, it seemed like maybe that moment where Treize puts the pastoral visual inside her mech might have been one of the opportunities to try and start brainwashing her for the sake of being the flower. That way she's an easy plant within the system. So I know that you're not going to confirm or deny anything, but that's definitely something that was on my mind for the better part of the episode, even with everything else going on. That seemed like the most interesting point. But besides that, I found it interesting to see that, first of all, dumb moment, when Duo gets brought to the space station, he is passed out until he starts to rouse of his own accord at the table to be told he's going to be executed, and then gets knocked back out again. They literally waited for him to wake up to let him know, hey, we're going to execute you. Do a chop to the back of his neck to make him pass out again, and then put him in a cell.
Yep, classic.
Why not just put him in the cell first?
Classic, ridiculous karate move that just magically knocks people out. Purely, I don't know why.
To be fair, judo and aikido are a big deal in Japan. It is often a part of standard course taking in like phys ed and whatever. So knowing judo or aikido is not uncommon, and that would be where we get the chop from. The judo chop that they make fun of so readily in Austin Powers. It's because of that.
Yeah, it's really just a scene to give us some exposition, also to set up some tensions. I don't know why it has to be only in that room. It's odd to me too. They could have streamlined that. This whole section, which I don't think is necessary, but pretty much everything once we get everybody up to space, including Zex, which happens earlier in the manga, or concurrently with everybody else going to space, there's a big time skip for a while. And then occasionally they do flashbacks to what everybody was doing once they got into space. But this is a particular section that they're actually not going to deal with very much at all. And when you're going to come back, you're going to come to see, well, I can't say because that'll spoil things later on, but
sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I agree. It's sort of an odd way to compress all the information you're trying to get out. It doesn't work very well. It does feel like, all right, why did we wake him up to knock him out again so we could have this? Yeah, I agree with you, Bob. It's a moment.
Yeah, I mean, like, I say this, but I also realize that if we had just thrown him into the cell and then had Nickel talk to him through the bars of the door or something, that it would have been a little mustache twirly. So I don't know that there is a real way to win here. But going back to the jailbreak moment, I thought it was interesting. Not the actual like moving through and hey, we're gonna hit the button and explosions. The fact that we don't get to know why Hiro is, pardon. We don't get to know why Hiro says that, oh, we're not going to run away. We think, oh, okay, why is he flim-flamming over the idea of suicide? And it's not that. It's he has this ingenious idea to throw off the calibration on the doll forms of the Taurus unit. And utilizing the fact that they don't recognize individuals, they just recognize shapes. And so seeing that a Leo was seemingly shot out to escape, they start attacking all Leos. They see that a spacesuit is apparently the issue, so they start killing all spacesuits. I think that was ingenious on Hiro's part, but it also led to a question that, again, I don't expect you to answer, but a thought that came to mind. Is the reason why Hiro is such a strong-willed and apparently physically and mentally strong individual, is it not the fact that he's an anime protagonist, but instead that, much like the robots that are being piloted, he's an android of some kind, some sort of non-human?
There is something to that word non-human that I think is interesting, and you'll see a lot more of it in the movie. But there is something in the movie that isn't there, and we can go into a little bit of Hiro's backstory now, where there is a man named Odin Lowe, which is why I think Hiro gets associated with the number 1. And he is this mercenary that is believed, that is strongly hinted at as being the person that killed the original Hiro Yui, the man who was trying to bring about total peace in space. The manga casts more doubt on who hired him to do it. It may not be Oz. It also may not be the Alliance. It could be somebody from the space colonies themselves. We're not really sure. It's not really the focus of it. In that way, it's similar to some stuff that happens in Mobile Suit Gundam that I won't sort of discuss here. But Odin Lowe is this mercenary that found this Hiro Yui boy who didn't have a name at the time or had a different fake name. And he kind of goes with this mercenary on kind of one last job. But essentially, the mercenary uses him to like get jobs done because no one suspects 5-year-old Hiro Yui to be a patsy. So this mercenary who's trained at killing and sort of kind of doing what he needs to do to survive teaches all these lessons to Hiro. And that's part of how Hiro is what he is today and how he knows how to do a lot of these things and treats a lot of these things as a job, which is why it's interesting when, despite not planning to have to bring Duo out of there, he decides, all right, well, I'm going to do it even though you might be a liability later on, not just in the escape here, but also in the general goal that I have of eliminating Oz.
Yeah, well, and that leads to the final point that I had for the episode, which was the idea of Hiro, because my brain keeps wanting to call Duo Hiro is why I keep stopping myself. When Hiro starts talking to Duo, he talks about how now all 5 of the scientists are liabilities.
Yeah.
Even though we were to assume that the scientists were the ones that trained, packaged, and charged out these 5 kids. So now it does bring up the question, what is Hiro doing? Is he not associated with them? Is he having something greater occurring? What is happening in the mind of this child soldier that seems to have him act in such brash and erratic ways?
So, what they've sort of set up already that I don't mind confirming is that Hiro is really only associated with one of them, but was able to infer that the other ones each have their own as well if they have Gundams.
Yes.
So he really actually only, if he had an emotional attachment to any of them, it really only be the one. And 2 is, generally why you kind of silence people that are captured is because they might give away more information about the larger plan. And so that just might mean that these 5 scientists are part of a larger plot or organization that we may or may not have seen yet. There's also an element that we're also very quickly going to find out next episode, another very good reason why Hiro would want to get rid of them. But I won't go into that now because the episode will make you know very quickly.
Were there any other notes on your side?
Yeah, let's take a peek. This is good. Yeah, you're new to it. I'm not. I've seen it a million times. Yeah, so you bring up Lady Un's kind of transformation and sort of this fractured mental state she seems to be in. The show does... maybe not unusual for anime per se, but for our Western audiences, you wouldn't see a lot of these impressionistic techniques kind of used to let us know, what's going on in her head and how she kind of feels internally about this other state of this person that we haven't seen her be as much when she's hoping for peace. And so there's these bright lights are kind of flashing on her, and she's technically having a conversation through kind of radio comms between the Gundam and the plane, but they design it in a way where it's like they're having a direct conversation with each other in sort of a way that new types often do in older Gundam shows that had new types of just talking like to each other's minds or hearts or however you view that. So that's kind of there too. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to kind of help it stand out and give a little more interest and visual charge to those kind of moments. There is also a very interesting speech, that's a little monologue that Zekus gives at the end as he's flying out to space. Howard, Duo's friend from earlier, hinting that he was the 6th person I was talking about last week, Bob, the 6th scientist that helped build the Tallgeest.
Yes.
And that's probably how he gets hooked up with Duo later on. But Zex talks about space rejecting humans and the Earth pulling us down because of our hubris, to remind us of our hubris. And this is sort of a very common thing that came up in sort of the original UC timeline a lot, this notion of like Earth or like this people in space viewing the people on Earth as having their souls pulled down by gravity, as the space people were trying to bring about a reformation of humanity, which in the first series was viewed as a bad thing, and in the second series was viewed as a good thing. And then by the time they get to the movie, it's a lot more complicated than either of those options. So that was a little harken back to the old Gundam shows of yore. And then lastly, I really like that Duo, they get into this ship and they fly away, and Duo's like, all right, well, let's go get your Gundam because mine's trapped there. And he was like, I didn't bring my Gundam. That would be I would be caught like you. I'd be an idiot. And so I like the idea that Hiro, our Gundam series protagonist, ostensibly, is like, yeah, I don't fucking need my Gundam. I'm not going to have my Gundam for a while now, in fact, because I'm going to get shit done the old-fashioned way. That's a fun show for a Gundam show to take. They don't do that very often, where they separate the pilot for their Gundam, let alone for a sustained period of time. So that's something I appreciate that this show does as well. And so those are my thoughts on Gundam Wing. And so now we can go to The Way We Go. Did you have any thoughts that came up for you as you watched these episodes this week?
I did make fun briefly about the fact that, oh, hey, look at this ending theme. Check out Relina. Sure, I'm glad that we got to talk to Relina these past 4 or 5 episodes.
I know. I agree.
So I feel like we're not going to see her again for at least another 2 or 3.
It will be a bit. I don't think we see her again until the halfway point, but then we spend a great deal of time with her as her circumstances will have changed since the Antarctic battle.
Okay. But other than that, I think I thought I had more to talk about for The Way We Go, but a lot of it was just in G Gundam. Man, I want to play an Argo Gulski type. And in Gundam Wing, I will give an anecdote of what my wife said.
Sure.
They're flying when they're going through this. Apparently, out of nowhere, the zero gravity just kicks in, and so the charge in one of the hallways that they're in goes off, and they start coming forward because of the pressure created by the explosion, along with the fact that apparently zero grav you get to choose when it goes off, and then they're just flying over the top of the hangar where all the Leos and the like are, and they're just shooting down or throwing explosives, and it's like, this is anime as shit, isn't it?
Well, 1, yeah, it's a little cool, but 2, zero gravity doesn't go off in space. You know, it's the norm. You actually have to have your computers keep it away. So
You knew what I meant.
Yeah, as they're destroying parts of the machine of the ship that they're in, it would make sense that certain corridors wouldn't have it anymore.
I think it's just because of the fluidity of it. Like, none of us as the viewers were told that, oh, hey, they put these on top of certain areas, and that's why they knew that as soon as that charge went off, they'd be able to just keep the forward momentum going. We just go, explosion. Oh, we don't need to touch the ground anymore. We're just going to float on by.
If you want to quibble with anything, I think you should be that Hiro has already predetermined these charges, though it's not really surprising for his character at this point anyway. It was probably part of his escape plan.
But he
like,
even says he doesn't have an escape plan.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have a good one because he has to carry this guy out, but he's also got to shoot his way out too. It's going to be tough. I wish they had spent more time.
I'm not trying to quibble for no reason, but this is also
no. But like,
the
the zero gravity you don't need to quibble with. You can quibble with the action hero stunts, but the zero gravity makes sense to me. I'm sorry they didn't tell you that that's how it works, but it doesn't take an astrophysicist to realize that would probably happen.
I agree. I'm using the zero gravity as the focal point of why the action effects even work. It would have been equally silly to me to have just had a Die Hard moment. So it's not that I have a problem with the zero gravity. I think it's just, it was interesting, not bad, interesting to me that they were able to just change their cognition to be able to be prepared for the change in gravity and utilize it to its greatest momentum. That's all. Well, it's not a neg. It's just a surprise.
Well, now I will tell you my secret, Bob. This time around, I didn't even notice. And part of it is because I just don't really pay attention very strongly to action sequences. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, get through this stuff, get to the parts I care about, which is why I guess it's noteworthy that I point out the fight between China guy and Russia guy, because it did hold my interest. I was more interested in that than whatever Domon did later on, other than knowing, I don't know, when he tells me, oh, I figured it out, I'm like, okay, great. But I can check out for the rest of it because he's just sort of following through. But I like this dynamic of Saisaishi, being overly energetic and expressive and very fast and quick, and Argo's just sort of like ducking and weaving as he needs to, waiting for his opening. That was an interesting way to do that. It was one of the more interesting fights in G Gundam. But normally in fights and in these action sequences, it's just hard for me to kind of pay attention very deeply because my eyes just sort of gloss over it and wait. So I didn't even realize that they were walking and then became floating. I don't know. It was just like I just let it sort of wash over me until we get to something that I care about.
Well, yeah, because you're definitely watching this from a perspective of not only having seen the series several times at this point, but you're also a very what's the word I want to use here? It's not a matter of intellect. It's you are looking for the moments between people. You like the interpersonal activity that's occurring in the space opera that is Gundam Wing, and I think that's why you had a good moment with the Dragon Gundam Bolt Gundam fight. The two of them are very different in terms of the philosophy of how they fight and what they are fighting for. And because of that, you're seeing two ideals, two philosophies taking issue with each other. And I think that is what might have interested you beyond just the physical nature of, I am the stoic guy who is very strong. I have to be able to do these things, versus the kid who's just being a little shit and trying to show off and try to scare him off because, of course, I'm a big guy. I'm big boy. He's the baby bitch.
Yeah, like you're seeing their personalities play out in their fighting approaches and in that battle. And so that gives me something to hold on to, where this sort of scene of them setting off explosions and then moving through a hallway, anyone would really do it that way, probably. Like there's nothing of note there. It's sort of generic and it's vague. And so, there isn't anything to hold on to. You're just like, okay, they're getting from point A to point B. But this could have been Catra and Wu Fei, could have been Troa, could have been the doctors. Like, anyone could do this. So
yes,
there's no reason to know.
I was interested by the cognitive shift of them being able to just go from walking down the hallway where Hiro is dragging Duo over his shoulder and having Duo set off the charges, and then using the forward momentum of the charges, somehow being able to prepare and hope that the gravity was going to turn off, and then use that as an easier way to propel themselves instead of having to drag one person's body using another's.
Yeah, I think it helps that they were born and raised in space, and so they're familiar with this kind of or that kind of gravity versus non-gravity lifestyle. And Hiro probably very well researched the barge station anyway, long before going in there. So,
yeah, that's fair. I'll buy that.
So
and it's, again, it's not been me trying to nitpick it.
No, because I'm going to say something now, and you're going to think I'm nitpicking G-Gundam, and I'm not. I'm sort of pointing out something that bothers me a little bit in sort of anime in general, but American stuff does this a lot too, especially in TV, where, you know, he's told like, hey, you gotta, what was it? Like, focus all your energy on one thing, focus all your senses on one thing, something like that. Focus
your senses on the enemy.
Yeah.
And then so on and so forth.
And then he sort of just does it. And, I guess if he's going to have this big moment, maybe we shouldn't be distracted by this other fight. And we should see Domon trying to do that instead of halfway through being told what the secret is. And then Domon just getting to do it. And it just would be interesting to see protagonists in general. I don't know. It feels like, because the marquee moment of this to me is in this very bad, but maybe it's just mediocre show called like Aquarian or Aquarius or something. Sure. That's also a giant robot show that came out in the mid 2000s. And they're fighting in a robot. They're like a team of 5 teenagers that fight in a robot, and they're being trained by, their own version of Master Asia. And he's like, when you fight, you got to take and they're not in the mobile suits at this point, but they're being taught regular martial arts. And they're like, when you fight, you got to take your shoes off and feel the ground under you. You got to get connected to the earth. And, that happens at the beginning. And then at the end, as this bad guy's beating them up, they realize like, wait, we got to take off our shoes. And you're thinking, how is that going to help? But somehow it just does. And so it's just a sort of a thing that TV can do because it comes from a more radio background, where they can tell us what they need to do, and then they can say that they're doing it, and then we just buy that they are. And I just wish we could find more elegant ways around going back to that old thing. I know what they're talking about in these types of shows are sort of these, transcendental kind of fighting ideas or more less tangible notions about what that sensation of being in battle is. That is hard for us to relate to anyway, but there has to be, especially if you're an anime, there has to be a more interesting visual approach you could take, even if it's not necessarily in the realist camp, which you've already left behind because they're fighting in giant robots anyway. So it's, do what you did in Gundam Wing and do some impressionistic stuff or expressionistic stuff, or find a way to create your internal world externally. And then it doesn't have to be sort of feel like an easy win for our hero, and then we're more invested. That's my note for you young writers out there.
Yeah, it's done very quick. I can't even argue that. But I will say, though, too, that the visual metaphor being used is literally tunnel vision. We have the Death Dragon create this tunnel of fire that goes from focusing on the Shining Gundam towards focusing on Domon, and then Domon effectively taking the camera over the line, right? And then facing it back at the Death Dragon to then use that as a way to focus on just that thing. There's fire all around, and we already feel that for him from the feedback. Forget the fire, focus on him, charge forward. So it is done very quickly. It is not a major lesson, but it is a lesson that he needs to just be able to accelerate our story.
Yeah, he does need it. I just wish it felt more distinct from the other times I've seen him do this, because then it would feel like he's making progress. It would feel like he's making progress. I know he's making progress because they're telling us that. The same way I know that Argo can't lose, because 1, he tells us, and 2, earlier in the episode, he reminds us that he and the green-haired lady remind us that he's got these other people he has to kind of protect. But like if we had like a flashback of seeing a younger Argo with those crews and like they're happier, just a quick, I don't know, a quick half a second view of a still image in his mind, that would have just helped enough. I gave that one a pass though because he's not the main character. I would just like to have had a little extra from Domon. But
I totally agree with you. I figured for the sake of the writers.
Yeah, the tunnel vision, you're right. That is something that helps. I would have liked more time to really make it sink, but the show was successful, so it got by anyway. This isn't even, G Gundam's long gone and made, so, but for you young people out there, don't cheat. That's all. Just take your time. It's okay. That's the meat of your story.
Another good note about that is adaptation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The movie adaptation or just adaptation?
You mentioned the whole don't cheat, show don't tell.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember that scene from when you showed me adaptation so many years ago back at Milford House. So
yeah, I've watched that movie a few times since then. It gets a chuckle out of me. It's fun. All right, Bob, I guess now we can go off to take a quick sit at the nerd corner. All right, I'm really excited about mine. Nobody else will be, but I'm excited.
Tell me about it.
So last week I got to tell you about our great friends at Arbelos bringing Damnation to the virtual screens, much like they did for Satan Tango back when you could go to theaters. And I spent like 1 week, one Saturday, or it was a Sunday in October last year, just in a theater, because like it's a 7.5 hour movie. It's fun. They give you a 20-minute intermission, a third of the way through, and then an hour-long break for dinner, 2/3 of the way through, which is very lovely. But long last, at 3 years after announcing that they were going to be releasing it on Blu-ray in this new 4K rescan remaster. Finally, the sales went up yesterday, and I found out about them, fortunately, about 15 minutes after they went live. Why is this important? Because if you're one of the first 500 purchasers of this DVD, this new Blu-ray collection, you will also get a limited edition slip cover to put the DVD in, Bob. And I'm pretty sure I got in quick enough. I hope I outraced 500 other, early rising Hungarian black and white apocalyptic film-loving people out there, but we'll wait and see. It won't come out until January, sadly, but it's actually a good time for me to catch up and watch it.
You got number 384 or 501?
No. Why 384? What is that?
Oh, I just chose an arbitrary number that wasn't like 499.
Oh, okay. 501, that would be.
You either did or you didn't.
Yeah.
That's all.
I don't know. I'm hoping. I snuck in 15 minutes after. I'm feeling good. I don't think it was a hotly contested thing. There's even a chance they don't even get to sell out all 500 because it's such a niche product. But this is
That's exactly it.
This is sort of like the even edgier, nicher Criterion Collection, this sort of new startup company. They've only released 4 movies, one of which was that Juniper Tree movie we saw in Boston a few years right before
did
I
it
left.
release on a disc format?
Yeah, it got released a lot earlier than Satan Tango, which was both announced before it and screened after it, which was a little annoying. But Juniper Tree's out. You can buy that. They also have a few other movies like The Last Cowboy, which isn't the type of movie you think it would be. Son of the White Mare, which is this really interesting Eastern European animated film from the 70s. Pretty psychedelic, a good time. I can't remember the others off the top of my head.
Is it in the same vein as Fritz the Cat?
No. It's not as
What about Heavy Traffic?
Sexual. Yeah, a little closer. Yeah, that's like I don't know. This is more psychedelic, but also
intentionally trolling Skeyhill, dear listeners, with very psychedelic but also sexually charged animations from the 1970s.
Yeah, those are sort of very like pop art psychedelic. This is more like minimalist psychedelic. Like it's not. It's sort of harkens back to a really old type of animation style with a really new visualization process. It was a very interesting film to retell this kind of old style myth from that region. And so some might not like it because of that, because like those old tropes can be a little tiring. But like, I don't know, for me as a classical scholar, I found them amusing. Heavy Traffic, I actually kind of like. I don't like Fritz the Cat that much, but I do.
I haven't gotten to watch Heavy Traffic, but I used to watch Fritz the Cat regularly as a teenager.
Yeah. So
I'm also the kind of person that would own Caligula, because I do in fact own Caligula.
Okay. Yeah. So that's my really nerdy, really niche nerd corner for this week. Bob, what is your much more socially acceptable nerd corner?
I mean, I don't know if we can talk about socially acceptable when I just admitted to owning a film that was in part produced by Penthouse and had the original script written by, but not completed by, Gore Verbinski. Or no, I'm sorry, Gore Vidal. Gore Vidal.
Yeah. Goverdal, great writer, weird guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Weird guy.
But I just want to note that right now because apparently I believed that he had been the primary writer this whole time. It's that they took a script that was meant to be turned into a film from him, and he didn't like how Penthouse and other producers were trying to manage it.
Yeah.
So he took his hands off the project and passed them on, but they still had him billed as being involved with the film to give it legitimacy.
Yeah, it makes sense. Unfortunate for him, though.
Yeah, really.
David Lynch tried very hard to get his name off of Dune for a long time.
So as far as nerd things are concerned, this is a sort of pseudo plug. I'm now technically a game developer.
Oh, well, how is that?
Well, if you were to go onto itch.io, that's itch.io, and you found my compatriot Anthony Domenico, also known as Librarian PC, and that would be the name you'd look up. He and I have developed a standard rules document known as an SRD in the tabletop role-playing game community for a system called Niche, a screen-worthy RPG, where instead of it being a D20 system like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, and while it is in the same vein as other D6 systems, I'm thinking Powered by the Apocalypse, Blades in the Dark, this system changes a few of those things so that way you still get some of the tense moments of a D20 because we have incorporated critical failures and successes and what those might mean for you. The character sheets are not sheets as much as they are 6 cards that you have arranged in a certain way for your character, and you're using archetypes for some of the pre-made character cards, but the other cards are blank because you are going to come up with the concept of what this story is. You are going to choose whatever story you want to play, and rather than have to jury rig it with something like D20 or whatever, we give you all the tools to make a fun story. We also ensure that it is heavily role play focused by making it be collaborative on how you make your cards with regards to other players. Your scenes are all taken care of by you having personal tropes instead of the term moves. And you are applying those in a way that makes the dice have a boon of, either a +1 or an extra die, depending on how important the thing is. But it makes sure that you are able to tell a story that you could effectively, turn into a script.
All right. So, Bob, what's your official plug for that?
Librarian PC, LIBARIANPC.itch, like itch and scratch, .io/niche, NICHE. I'm also going to be giving this to Skeyhill right now. It may or may not end up in the show notes. One last thing that does go along with this, and it's very important, for the month of November, which unfortunately I think will have passed by the time this reaches your ears.
Yeah.
We are doing $4 instead of $5 for the standard price, and half of all purchases will be going directly to Fuck Cancer, a charity that, as you might understand, is to stop cancer, or at least aid in the development and research of different ways to help save lives.
Well, very accurate name for that event. So pretty good there. All right, Bob, what are your other more personal plugs as we wind things down?
Other more personal plugs include my website, bobskerryvoa.com, where you can listen to my demos and hire me to do vocal work for you. Don't be afraid. I'm willing to vocalize most anything within reason, and I'll make sure that you get your bang for buck. You can also find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and a slew of other social media sites. If it's easier for you, just go to Linktree /bobskerryvoa, and you'll find all my links.
And let's, of course, thank Lev Van Rensselaer for minding those knobs and dials. And I am your host, Patrick Scale. You can find my features, documentaries, short films, video essays, animations, behind-the-scenes footage, and so much more at quixoticunited.com and social media with a similar-sounding name of some sort. Bob, tell the audience why trampolines hate you.
Trampolines hate me because I know what they're up to.
Just one big communication.